Imagine a world where the most powerful nation on Earth, the global superpower that controls world trade, world finance, world innovation, is standing on the edge of a financial cliff. A cliff built not by enemies, not by wars, not by fate, but by its own decisions. A cliff made of numbers so massive they no longer feel real, yet every American is standing on it right now. Because the United States has crossed $38 trillion in debt, a number larger than the GDP of China, larger than the entire European Union's economy, larger than anything the world has ever seen. And the scariest part is that most people have no idea how dangerous this has become. This story doesn't begin with collapse. It begins with confidence, with pride, with the belief that a giant can never fall. For decades, America borrowed freely, spent boldly, and promised endlessly. But behind all that confidence, the cracks were already forming. Every year, the government spent more than it earned. Every crisis brought more borrowing. Every election created more promises. And every promise came with a price that future generations would be forced to pay. The number kept rising. 10 trillion, 15 trillion, 20 trillion, 28 trillion. And now, $38 trillion. A mountain of debt so huge it grows faster than the American economy itself. To understand how bad this is, imagine having a credit card bill bigger than your entire house, your salary, your assets, everything. Even if you work day and night, you can't pay it off. You can only pay the interest, hoping the lender never knocks on the door. This is the position of the United States today. Most of America's debt is not owed to foreigners, but to Americans themselves, pension funds, banks, investors, institutions, and even the Federal Reserve. The country is borrowing from tomorrow to survive today. It is taking money from the future to pay for the present, but the future is getting angry. Interest payments have exploded to record levels. The U.S. now pays hundreds of billions every year just to keep the debt alive, not to reduce it, just to maintain it. Imagine burning money just to stop the fire from spreading. That is exactly what America is doing. And every time the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, the debt becomes even more dangerous. The fire grows stronger and the water supply grows weaker. Inflation becomes harder to control because a country drowning in debt cannot easily fight rising prices. The dollar begins to weaken because trust starts to fade. Investors grow nervous because they know every empire in history that embraced endless debt eventually met the same fate. And ordinary Americans feel the pressure in the form of expensive food, high rent, and falling savings. But the biggest danger isn't economic, it's political. Every debate in Washington is a battle. Instead of lowering debt, each side increases spending to gain votes. The only thing both parties agree on is borrowing more money. When a country cannot unite on basic financial survival, the debt becomes unstoppable. The U.S. crossed $38 trillion not because it had no choice, but because nobody could agree on a different path. And now the consequences are becoming impossible to ignore. Behind that massive number lie deeper problems. Healthcare costs rising every year, Social Security becoming more expensive as the population ages. Medicare consuming huge amounts of the budget and tax revenues failing to keep up with the promises of the past. America has built a financial engine that runs on borrowed fuel, and the tank is now dangerously close to empty. If this engine stops, the world will feel the shock instantly, because the US dollar isn't just another currency, it is the backbone of global trade. If the backbone breaks, everything collapses. Every bank in the world holds US bonds. Every country relies on the dollar for imports and exports. Every major company prices goods in US currency. And every investor treats the US government as the safest borrower on earth. But what happens when the safest borrower becomes the most indebted borrower? What happens when trust begins to fade? The global financial system starts to shake. The foundations begin to crack. Economists are worried not because America is poor, it is still wealthy. Not because America is weak, it is still powerful. They are worried because history shows a dangerous pattern. Every empire that took on too much debt, every empire that ignored its limits, every empire that borrowed endlessly without discipline eventually faced collapse. The Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, all followed the same path. Debt, debt, debt. Then decline. Nobody believes the U.S. will collapse tomorrow. But collapse never happens overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, beneath the surface. And then suddenly, all at once. The signs are already here. Inflation hitting families harder than ever. Housing becoming unaffordable. Young people losing faith in the future. Business confidence falling. Foreign countries slowly reducing their reliance on the dollar. These are not random events. They are signals, financial warning signs. Signals that the system is under stress. Signals that the debt is reaching a point of no return. As the U.S. crosses $38 trillion, the world watches with uncertainty. Investors are asking questions they never asked before. Countries are exploring alternatives to the dollar. And economists warn that the next crisis could be unlike anything the world has ever experienced. Because when a normal country goes bankrupt, the world continues. But when the United States goes into financial trouble, the entire world feels it. America is too big to fail and too big to save. No country, no alliance, no institution can rescue the U.S. from its own debt. That is why the 38 trillion number matters. It represents more than borrowing. It represents decisions, habits, and systems that have been ignored for decades. It represents a financial future that is becoming dangerously unpredictable. If the U.S. stays on this path, the next generation will inherit a burden they never agreed to carry. They will face higher taxes, fewer jobs, weaker benefits, and a financial system that struggles to stay stable. Worst of all, they will wonder why nobody acted when the warning signs were clear. But the story is not over. America still has time to stabilize, time to reform, time to reverse the damage. But that requires discipline, courage, and leadership. And right now, those qualities are missing in Washington. Until they appear, the number will continue to rise and the world will continue to watch. Because every dollar added to America's debt is a dollar added to global uncertainty. Every trillion added is a reminder that even the greatest nations cannot escape consequences. And every tick of the debt clock makes the future just a little more fragile. The United States stands at a crossroads. One path leads to stability and recovery. The other leads to chaos and collapse. The next decisions will determine which path the world's biggest economy chooses, and the clock is ticking faster than ever.